How's it going, everybody? My name is Red Gold Maximus here, back again for another video, and today we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite movies of all time, Amadeus. Now, here's the thing. Amadeus is a movie that most people in my generation, and even the generation before, are unfamiliar with. The reason for this is because not only is the movie old, coming out in the early 1980s, but the premise is also not that exciting to a casual viewer. It takes a lot of patience to really get into this movie, but despite that, Amadeus remains to this day one of my favorite movies ever. Like, the only movie I would consider better than Amadeus is The Princess Bride, which I promise I will be doing a yay, nay, or okay on at least someday. But Amadeus is a movie that is a little harder to get into than The Princess Bride, as this movie is literally twice as long as The Princess Bride. And the thing is, when this movie came out, it was released with a PG-13 rating, and it was only 2.5 hours long, which is a bit more digestible for some people, but the director's cut version that I've seen is 3 hours long and is rated R. And the 30 extra minutes do include a lot of deleted scenes that some might deem unnecessary. Personally, I think that adds a lot of layer to the story. Now, what is the story? The story is about an Italian composer named Antonio Salieri, and basically he's now in his 70s, and he tries to kill himself at the beginning of the movie after confessing that he killed Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And then he's committed to an asylum where he begins speaking with a priest about the actions of his past, and what led to his supposed murder of the beloved composer. He's initially untrustworthy of the priest, but grows fond of him and begins to reveal his story starting from that day and into the next morning. And my God, can I just say that F. Murray Abraham as Antonio Salieri is incredible. Just want to get that off the table. I'll mention that more later on. But anyway, as he describes the story, he talks about the younger version of himself and how he rose through the ranks of being from a musical Haydn family and going all the way up the ranks, all the way into the most beloved composer in Europe. But now his spot is being threatened by Mozart, whose popularity has been slowly rising throughout Vienna, Austria, and now he's gained the favor of the emperor, who Salieri used to be the emperor's favorite, but now Mozart is kind of taking his place. So it's basically a story of bitter jealousy, how Salieri is trying to politic with all the other composers and all the other political figures to try and discredit Mozart so that he'll be sent away back to Salzburg, where he's from, so that Salieri can take back his place. And my God, when he's telling the story about his past, and when we're in his past, everything is just so engaging. F. Murray Abraham as Salieri is one of the best performances I've ever seen in any movie ever. Like, seriously, I could not get enough of this guy. The Academy Award that he got is absolutely deserved. Like, he is so good at being likable and also detestable at the same time. Like, you understand why he does the things that he does. You understand why he hates Mozart. You understand why he wants to get rid of him. And you understand all this stuff. You understand, like, why he feels the way he does, and why he feels so ashamed of it later on in his life. But at the same time, you hate him because this movie makes you love Mozart as well, so when you see him constantly politicking against Mozart, it makes you hate Salieri just as much as you might have related to him. And it's because he's such a divisive, well, villain, really, that makes Salieri such a memorable movie character. And he's not the only memorable character in this movie. No, no, no. His rival, Mozart, is just as damn memorable, if not more so. He is such a party animal in this movie, and he's so innocent. Like, despite the fact that he's a party animal, you still can't get your head wrapped around the fact that he's experienced, because he's not really that experienced. His own wife, Constanze, actually says that he's not practical, like, that he's not really good with money, that he is a party animal, and he can be a bit irresponsible sometimes. And Salieri has outright said that he didn't understand why God would make Mozart his instrument instead of Salieri, who's much more pious, much more humble, and much more, well, proper than Mozart. And it's totally easy to agree with him, but at the same time, Mozart is just so damn likable. Like, seriously, I love every minute that Tom Hulce is playing Mozart. To think that Mark Hamill almost played Mozart is unreal, but the director apparently didn't want somebody as recognizable as Mark Hamill was, because he was just coming off the success of the original Star Wars trilogy, where he portrayed Luke Skywalker, and he didn't want Luke Skywalker to steal the thunder from Salieri. He wanted to have two relatively unknown actors, both in the roles, and both of them ended up really succeeding in their roles, but unfortunately neither of them really saw that much work after this movie. They're both still alive or whatever, but neither of them have been in that many movies since then, which is really unfortunate, because they both deserve to have more attention, at least in my opinion. I mean, from what I've heard, Tom Hulce was in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but I've never seen that movie, so I can't say whether or not he's actually good in that role or not. From what I've heard, he is. So, and the fact that I learned that Tom Hulce is actually gay, I'm not opposed to it or anything. I'm just really impressed that he actually manages to make his relationship with his wife really believable, despite the fact that in reality he doesn't even like women, like in real life. And there are actually a lot of rumors that in reality Mozart actually liked men and women. So I like how his character is almost blurring the lines there. Like, he may or may not be bisexual, he kind of acts like he is a little bit in some scenes. And I like that. I like how it has some ties to what may or may not be true. He has this crazy laugh that's super memorable, and I've actually kind of adopted a laugh that's very similar to his because I've seen this movie so many times. And that laugh apparently might have been real because some historical documents have said that he may or may not have actually had a fairly irritating laugh. I personally think the laugh is funny. It always cracks me up whenever I hear that laugh. Whenever I hear that, it always brings a smile to my face. Whenever I watch this movie, it brings a smile to my face until we get to the final third. The final third is, well, it's real emotional like. I mean, of course, it's supposed to be. The final third is basically where Mozart goes down. He goes really downhill, actually, towards the end of this movie. He becomes an alcoholic, and Salieri's starting to reap the rewards of his downfall, although he isn't really, because people still like Mozart, but he's not exactly favored anymore by the nobles. He was never really properly favored by the nobles, but now the emperor doesn't really like him anymore. He hasn't been giving him any work. Like, now he has to, by the end of the movie, he has to do all of his plays in this rinky-dink theater for all these commoners instead of, like, in the old theater where the emperor would go and all the noble people would watch his performances. Or, not his performances, his plays, is what I meant to say. His operas. And, my God, you can tell that Salieri and Mozart are just both so passionate about music. The way they describe music, like, to the characters in this movie is just outstanding. There's just so many quotable scenes in this movie. I've actually done reenactments of movie scenes on my Facebook page. I might redo them here on the RGM network simply because I love Amadeus so much, and I would love to redo those reenactments again. Like, seriously, I love this movie so much, and I love to reenact the scenes. And speaking of, the deleted scenes, some people may or may not think are unnecessary. I really liked them. Like, they have a deleted scene where Mozart goes to Salieri's house and is practically begging him for a loan. He's about to ask for like 2,000 florins, but then he hesitantly like brings it down to 200, and then he's like 150. And Salieri is hinting that he'll give him the money if he explains his play to him. Like, he wants to know more about his next play, which is The Marriage of Figaro, but he's keeping that a secret. He wants to know more about it, but Mozart is too prideful to tell him. So Salieri gives him a job or whatever. He recommends him to a colleague, like another noble. And he's supposed to tutor that noble's daughter, but like they have all these dogs or whatever, and they keep barking during his performance, and Mozart's getting more and more frustrated. And oh my God, I really do think that adds a lot to Mozart's character. Because while it might not make a lot of sense, because this is supposed to be from Salieri's point of view, that's my only nitpick really, is that it's supposed to be from Salieri's point of view, but there's a lot of scenes without Salieri in them. That's my only pet peeve. I don't really understand how that works. But the fact that those scenes are so good that it's easy to look past that. And this is one of those scenes because later on when his father Leopold visits him, he's like, do you have any pupils? And Mozart's like, I don't want pupils. They get in the way. I need time for composition. And his father's like, composition doesn't pay. You know that. And, you know, I just think that that dog scene, or what people like to call it, the canine concert, in my opinion, just adds a lot. It shows that maybe tutoring people isn't not Mozart's strong suit. Like, maybe he is better suited not tutoring people. Like, maybe some of the things he's saying that are wrong with Vienna are true. Like, not everything he says is childish and irresponsible. He's smarter than he looks. And there's this other deleted scene, and oh my god, I cannot imagine the movie without this scene, actually. But basically, Mozart, he's offered the position to teach the Emperor's niece. He's offered to tutor the Emperor's niece. And basically, the only way he'll be appointed to the position is if he's willing to submit all of his work. He refuses to do so. And his wife is rightfully kind of frustrated with him, but Mozart doesn't want anybody stealing his work, which is understandable. But they need money. They really need money because Mozart keeps spending it all. So she goes to Salieri's and gives him the work anyway behind her husband's back. And oh, it's such a gripping scene. Like, Salieri's reading it and he's like getting all tearful and he's just so stunned, like. And he's like, in the future or whatever, he's talking about how bitter he was becoming at God because his work couldn't even compare to Mozart's. Mozart's was just too beautiful. It was like God's voice or whatever. And he literally drops the music notes down because he's in such shock and awe. And then that scene, I do believe, was kept in, but there's a scene at the end where Salieri tells Constanze, Mozart's wife, to come back to his mansion later that night. And he very creepily is like, oh, well, favors must be repaid in kind. You know, something like that. He says something like that. And so Constanze actually comes back later that night, she gets the hint, and she actually strips down to, well, reveal her cleavage. And it looks like the two are about to have sex together, but then Salieri rings the little bell for the servant to come back in and asks the servant to escort her out again. And then when he leaves, she picks up a candle and angrily throws it at the door that he's just left through. And then it cuts to a scene where, like, Constanze goes home and she's, like, crying alone in bed, and Mozart comes home from one of his concerts, and, like, he sees that his wife is in distress and tries to comfort her, and she just embraces him, and she's just like, I love you. I love you. Ah, it's such a touching scene. It adds a layer to Salieri. It shows that he doesn't necessarily want women. He just wants to hurt Mozart, and he wanted to publicly shame Mozart's wife, and he does it so well, and the emotion she feels that after he took advantage of her, and then he does not help Mozart get that job. It makes Salieri even more detestable, but at the same time you like Salieri because you understand his jealousy, you understand his motivations, and man, everything in this movie is just done so great. And basically, the last third transitions to Mozart really being down. The Emperor doesn't favor him anymore, so as I mentioned before, he has to do all of his concerts in a rinky-dink theater for not a lot of money, and he's embarrassed about the magic flute. He doesn't think it's very good, and he's trying to finish this Requiem Mass, which was commissioned to him by a guy who dresses up like his dead father, who's actually Salieri. It's very complicated. Basically, Salieri dresses up like Leopold, Mozart's father, to scare him, and then requests him to write a Requiem Mass. Salieri then plans to assassinate Mozart, take the Requiem Mass, and then play it at Mozart's funeral to take all the credit for it, which is ingenious, by the way. Not that I would ever do it, of course. I'm just kidding. But anyway, so yeah, it was just great plan. And then the scene where he's telling the priest about it, and then he's like, well, how does one kill a man? It transitions so well. The tone is just, it's all over the place, but it's done so realistically that I love it. I love every second that F. Murray Abraham is on my TV screen. And then, like, I love seeing Mozart, like, going out to party and staying up late to work on two projects at the same time. It's so relatable because people put a lot of pressure on me to get stuff done a lot. So I feel overworked occasionally. So it's like, it's really easy for me to relate with Mozart's struggles. And, like, I love how Constance is like, just let me sit here with you, and then she falls asleep next to Mozart while he's working on the Magic Flute or the Requiem Mass, whichever one he was working on, possibly both. And then he finishes the Magic Flute, but he's just so exhausted, and he passes out during the concert. And before that, there was this great scene where he goes off to a party late at night, and he comes back, and he's like tripping all over himself. He's slipping in the snow and shit. And he goes back home and finds his son and his wife are gone. They've packed up their shit and left. They're so annoyed at him. And then he does his performance, and he passes out from exhaustion, and Salieri pretends to take care of him, so he brings him home. And there's this great scene where Salieri wants Mozart to finish the Requiem Mass, and he's helping him finish it. But, like, at the same time, Mozart looks so terrible, and this is a moment where it truly feels like Mozart and Salieri are no longer rivals, that they're actually friends. And Mozart's like, all this time I never thought you cared for my music. And I believe Salieri's like, I adore your music. And he tells him not to be embarrassed about the Magic Flute, that the Magic Flute is a masterpiece. You know, stuff like that. It's just a great, touching scene. Once again, it blurs the lines between whether or not you're supposed to hate Salieri or love him. And the moments between these two, like when they're actually next to each other, are just incredible. They are able to build up their relationship so well when they're apart, but when they're together, those scenes just mesh so well. Their personalities are likable and relatable in their own ways, but at the same time, they both have their faults, but they're realistic. Oh, I'm in love with this movie, man. I love this movie. And Mozart's death scene, oh my god, Mozart's death scene. Mozart's death scene is just amazing, like Constanze decides that she doesn't feel right being away, so she takes her son, and they go back to the mansion where they live, and they find Salieri there, and she's rightfully mad because Salieri had publicly shamed her earlier on in the movie, something that was cut out of the original version, so nobody knew why she hated Salieri so much in the original version, which is another reason why that scene was so necessary, in my opinion. And I love how, like, she turns her back to her husband for 1 minute, and he dies, and then there's this, they do the Lacrimosa song playing in the background, which is just a beautiful piece. And they show Mozart being carried out on a coffin, there's all this rain, and all these other characters from earlier in the movie are there, and they're crying. Oh, it's just, I love that scene. It's so well done, it's so sad, and the follow-up where modern-day Salieri is, like, laughing, and he's going on, like, God would rather kill his own instrument than allow me to even bask in a piece of his glory. And he declares himself the patron saint of mediocrities and goes about absolving everybody. And the last scene we have is Salieri. He's like in the wheelchair. He's like this, and they're pushing him in the wheelchair. And you can hear Mozart's like in the background. It's just amazing, man. Oh my God, I cannot get enough of this movie. As I mentioned, there are only two things I don't really like about it. The first thing, as I mentioned, is the Mozart scenes, because they don't really make any sense if you think about it, because it's all supposed to be from Salieri's point of view, but not all the scenes have Salieri in them. So it doesn't really make all that much sense, but I'm willing to overlook it because those scenes are so good. But one thing that I think has no redeeming qualities is Mozart's house servant. Like, Salieri actually sends a maid or whatever to Mozart, and the maid is supposed to spy on Mozart for Salieri. And she goes back to Salieri one of these times. She's like crying, and Salieri's rightfully like, well, "What's the matter?" And she's like, "Well, I just came back from Herr Mozart's, and he gets drunk, and he frightens me." Oh, why you have to suck so much? Ugh. This movie's near perfect, but that maid is just terrible. I don't understand why she's so distraught. Mozart's not even that bad. He gets drunk, but he keeps it to his own. He literally does at a painting. You think he's gonna hurt you? He's not even doing anything. Like, that's the only gripe I got with the movie, is that maid. And she had the gall to cry at Mozart's funeral later on. I was like, and my girlfriend, I turned over to my girlfriend, and she actually said it first. She's like, "You bitch, why are you at his funeral crying? You do have no right to be there. You hated Mozart for no reason." And I totally agree. She had no right to hate Mozart. She was definitely no Salieri. But my god, this movie is incredible. Sir Neville Mariner did such a great job reorchestrating all of Mozart's songs. Like, this is the movie that made me fall in love with Mozart's music. I listen to Mozart's music all the time now to calm my anger management issues, which I have plenty of, by the way, just in case you didn't know that. And I love everything about Mozart's music. You can't change any of it. It's so damn perfect, like. And I just love it for it. And man, can I just talk about that opening scene? That scene where the first little bit of Don Giovanni plays, it goes, "Na da," and it's just so loud. And, like, I'm just imagining people on their phones, and then this da plays really loudly, and they have to look up because they're so freaked out they weren't expecting it. And, like, then it cuts to Salieri, and you don't see him, but he's screaming, "Mozart! Dun! It's such a great way to bring the viewers in. And then after he slits his throat, which is such a shocking visual, they have this song playing. I forget what the song is called. It's Symphony Number 25 in like B minor. I think that's what the song is called. It's such a long title. I forgot. But it's like the dun 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 dun. And then they're like dragging Salieri in like this sled to the asylum as all these other people are having a good time and partying while this song is playing so loudly. It's so hard not to get invested in this movie immediately because of that scene. Oh my god, I love this movie so much. Abso-fucking-lutely, Amadeus is getting a yay from me. Thank you all for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe down below to the RGM Network and send us all a message if you want to join us, because we are the RGM Network and we are here to provide a stomping ground for all yo rising stars. And I'll see all you dudes and chicks in the next video. Goodbye.